Narrative Contest 2011, dedicated to Captain Antonio Raggio from Chiavari, Bronze Medal for Military Valor. In December 1941, the Italian merchant ship Jason, previously named Sebastiano Venier, built in Holland, was torpedoed off the Greek coast by an English submarine, the Pearl-Poise, under the command of Captain E.F. Pizzi. On board the Jason, there were 2,000 prisoners of war from Britain and the Commonwealth, namely New Zealanders, Australians and Indians, who had been captured in North Africa. In the first months of 1941, following a powerful offensive by Rommel's Afrika Korps, approximately 35,000 Commonwealth soldiers were captured. The agreement between Mussolini and Hitler stated that these prisoners were to be managed by Italy. This is why they were transported on Italian merchant ships. First, let's see a short Italian film from the archives of the Institute Luce regarding the war in North Africa up to the El Alamein. In Northern Africa, around mid-1942, the Army of the Axis achieved important strategic victories. By the end of May, they started a massive offensive which took them in less than a month to El Alamein, even though Rommel's ultimate target was to take possession of the whole of Egypt. On the 26th of May, Mussolini is so optimistic that he tells Chano that Rommel could soon arrive at the Nile Delta. On the 2nd of June, Mussolini declares he would like to go to Africa, but he is afraid to cut a poor figure in case something goes wrong, as previously happened in Albania in 1941. In fact, at the beginning, not everything goes smoothly. But then on the 12th of June, Bir Hakeim is taken by storm, and on the 15th of June, a special bulletin declares that the Axis army has finally retaken Tobruk. Around 35,000 English soldiers have been captured. Hitler awards Erwin Rommel the rank of Field Marshal. The Italian-German advance continues. They occupy Badia and are approaching Masa Matru in Egypt. On the 26th of June, the German High Command releases a short bulletin. The troops of the Axis are mustering the enemy and continue to proceed eastward. Alexandria and Cairo are within reach. On that same day, Mussolini secretly leaves to northern Africa, hoping to soon enter into Alexandria on a white horse, holding the Islam sword in his hands. On the 26th, before leaving, he tells Chano of his disappointment that the victory is accredited to Rommel, and that Hitler, by according the rank of Field Marshal to Rommel, was an act designed to give Germany the honor of the victory. Probably, the Duce wanted to go to Africa also to claim Italian rights. It would be logical to think that Italian public opinion at the time was excited by the success in Africa, but a note by the minister Bottai on the 30th of June, interestingly, does not confirm this fact. Bottai writes, "The storming of Tobruk and the way Italian troops are advancing into Egypt seems to have difficulties in gaining people's imagination, and nobody dares hoping and believing in success." That same day, the army advanced almost 600 kilometers, suddenly stopping at El Alamein. When the ship Jason was torpedoed, 550 prisoners, including 45 New Zealand soldiers, affectionately called Kiwis, lost their lives. 8 months later, 117 more Kiwis, for a total of 162, died when another British submarine, the Turbulent, torpedoed twice the Italian ship Nino Bixio of the Garibaldi Maritime Society, which had rescued all Jason's survivors. The master mariner Antonio Raggio from Chiavari was in command of the Nino Bixio. These two episodes can be found in a fascinating book published in New Zealand in the 1980s, entitled No Honour, No Glory. The book tells of the horror and the courage that characterized this tragedy, and how these facts were never really reported by the historians. If it wasn't for the testimony of a few New Zealand soldiers, prisoners of the Italians, this episode would be totally unknown. Spencer Edge, one of the survivors, is the first who tells his version of the conflict in the book, since he was prisoner of war on board of the Jason. He talks about his experience in the desert of North Africa, where he was captured, and later becoming a victim of the torpedoing of the Jason and the Nino Bixio, and was subsequently rescued and survived. What a strange twist of fate, he writes, that an Italian ship carrying British and Commonwealth prisoners of war should be torpedoed by a British submarine, and then, after being abandoned by an Italian captain, the ship and all aboard are saved by a German marine engineer. The captains of the British submarines justified their tragic mistake and the massacre of their compatriots and allies by declaring that the two ships didn't have any sign on their sides saying prisoners of war or any Red Cross sign, like any other hospital ships, to indicate they were carrying war prisoners. But apart from these considerations, the order given to these submarines was that of sinking of enemy ships, even those carrying Allied prisoners, was a priority, as it was more important to deprive the enemy of a ship, despite the loss of human compatriot lives. The Jason was abandoned by the cowardly Italian captain, who slowed its speed without stopping its engines. The captain and many of the Italian crew escaped, leaving all the prisoners still on board to their fate. Fortunately, they were rescued by a German maritime engineer, who was on board and brought the ship to run ashore, with about 1,500 prisoners, most of which were wounded. These rare images show the Italian merchant ship run ashore. The pictures were taken by an Italian officer who was in the castle on Sapienza Island, as we can see in this aerial view. In spite of the searches, nobody has been able to locate this German maritime engineer, who was probably under the command of Rommel in the Africa Corps before boarding the Jason. The Italian captain, by contrast, acted as a real coward. When he saw the periscope of the British submarine, he abandoned the ship with the rest of the crew by getting into the lifeboats and letting the engine run dead slow. There were no engineers on board and no officers on the main bridge, but all the holds were full of English, New Zealand and Australian soldiers. The propeller, that was turning slowly, mangled many unfortunate prisoners who jumped into the sea after the torpedoing, since the rudder was heeling and the ship was turning in circles out of control. Luckily for him, also this Italian captain was never found after the war. This is the story told in the book No Honour, No Glory, written by Jim Henderson. But the story of these survivors hit by friendly torpedoes did not end here. They were rescued and welcomed aboard another Italian ship, the Nino Bixio, of the Garibaldi Maritime Society of Geneva. On the 17th of August 1942, at 3:45 p.m. off the Greek coast, also this ship was torpedoed by a British submarine, the Turbulent, under the command of Lieutenant Commander Tubby Linton. On that occasion, tragically 434 people died. By contrast, the behaviour of the captain of the Nino Bixio, Antonio Raggio, in this difficult situation was heroic. This is what the New Zealand prisoners said about him. Many prisoners started revolting against the Italian and German guards. Many of them were thrown into the sea, but Captain Raggio, holding a gun in his hands, forced the prisoners to end the mutiny, and he even obliged them to take those unfortunate prisoners out of the water. Thanks to his charisma and personality, he managed to get the situation under control, and he convinced everybody that rescuing the ship and their lives was their priority, whether they were prisoners or warders. The Nino Bixio was towed and taken into the harbour of Navarino, where it arrived the day after at 7:17 a.m. On the 1st of October, during an air raid, the ship was hit by 3 bombs and it sank. Many people were gathered in the officers' lounge at the time. Captain Raggio, realizing they were sitting target, gave immediately the order to evacuate the ship and run to the dock. A bomb hit the center of the officers' lounge shortly after. Raggio's prompt decision saved around 1,000 people, among them Italians and prisoners. On the 29th of June 1943, the Nino Bixio was brought back to the surface and towed to Venice to be repaired. In Venice, on the 10th of June 1944, the ship was yet again hit by bombs during an air raid. A royal decree on the 11th of February 1943 awarded Captain Raggio a bronze medal with the following motivation. Civil captain of a steamer hit by 2 torpedoes of an enemy submarine acted firmly and very skillfully to rescue and tow, contributing with a high sense of duty to the salvage of the ship. Antonio Raggio, captain of the Nino Bixio, behaved in complete contrast to his colleague of the Jason. Raggio was decorated by the regime of that time even before the 8th of September 1943, the day of armistice, for rescuing New Zealand and British prisoners torpedoed by mistake. His nephew, Cesare Raggio, who is still living in Chiavari, gave us many pictures, letters and clippings of New Zealand newspapers regarding this episode, and in New Zealand the ex-prisoners of war have created a memorial dedicated to the Italian ship Nino Bixio. Due to the impact of the torpedoes, 500 British and New Zealand prisoners who were kept in the holds died. No honour, no glory remembers those forgotten heroes, war prisoners, and the tragic destiny of those who never returned to New Zealand. It also underlines the difference between the 2 Italian captains. The captain of the Jason, who abandoned the ship with all the crew, even before being torpedoed by the Porpoise, and the captain of the Nino Bixio, Raggio, who will be defined a true hero. The author of the book is also critical of the British. Roughly a third of all the New Zealand victims who died during the Second World War were killed off the Greek coast by the 2 British submarines, the Porpoise and the Turbulent. However, the tragic story of these prisoners of war does not finish here. These unfortunate prisoners, who managed to stay alive after 2 torpedoing episodes during their transportation by sea and the bombing in a Greek harbour at Navarino, underwent another heavy air raid. It happened when they arrived in the concentration camp in Italy, 80 kilometers north of L'Aquila, during a massive raid by American bombers. Another 8 New Zealand prisoners died under friendly bombs and are buried in the war cemetery near Ancona. At the beginning of January 1944, after the armistice of the 8th of September 1943, the survivors were put on trucks and after an exhausting trip that lasted more than 36 hours, were transferred to a German concentration camp, Stalag 7A, at Moosburg, 30 kilometers north of Munich. During the imprisonment, Munich was bombed with more than 6,000 tons of friendly bombs. Those who returned home after 15 months of concentration camp said that the best meal they ever had was that one in England after liberation. They also said there were too many ghosts present at their meal. Many of the prisoners who found burial under the sea were later commemorated at the El Alamein Memorial. A certain number of prisoners were able to go back to New Zealand at the end of the war, and in Levin, near Wellington, they founded the association Prisoners of War Nino Bixio, and that of the survivors of the Jason. On the 50th anniversary, Raggio's nephew, Cesare, was warmly invited to participate to the 3 days of commemorations which took place in Levin. The clippings of some of the New Zealand newspapers describe the captain with these words: "A real sailor, magnificent, a true sea captain." They call him a hero, using the same words of the survivors. In talking about Captain Antonio Raggio, after the torpedoing of the Nino Bixio, they say, "On that awful day, August 17, 1942, he was an imperturbable figure, giving immense reassurance to everyone. He remained steadfast on the bridge. One Kiwi soldier, under shock, following him closely like a dog. The captain, understanding, turned to comfort him, as he did with many others aboard." Extraordinary memories, linked to an unknown and very modest man. Captain Antonio Raggio from Chiavari was honourably mentioned only by New Zealand and British newspapers. He never appeared on any Italian historical account. Almost 70 years have gone by, and today we want to retell this story in order to keep the memories alive and let more people know about his deeds. In order to remember Captain Antonio Raggio, we would like to end with a few pictures taken during his trips around the world as captain on merchant ships. Letters and clippings from New Zealand newspapers of the time. An important document of gratitude and respect towards this captain from Chiavari who saved so many lives. These episodes, together with many others, will be the topic of a book, which will be published soon with the title of Sea Memories 2, and who will be probably presented at the end of 2012 or early 2013. Captain Antonio Raggio was born in Chiavari on the 27th of April 1904. He took the diploma of Master Mariner at the Nautical Institute of Camogli in 1925, and he died in Chiavari on the 21st of April 1959. Thank you.